trim off the stuff whenever we get ready. We're recording now.
Cool. Just start into it then.
Aye, well.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Door 14 Hockey Podcast. I'm your host Marty alongside Dave.
Hello.
Hello. Just me and you tonight, just the two of us.
Dream team.
Dream team. Yep, dream team. We wouldn't say it out loud, but yep, dream team. Aaron and John can't join us tonight. They're dealing with family issues, so yes. we'll wish them all the best and
yes, wish them all the love and
all the love, and hopefully everyone gets better soon and send out our love to everyone, so fingers crossed. But we are without them tonight, so Dave, me and you will try our best to finish off the end of the 2021-2022 Elite Ice Hockey season in style as best we can, and try and cover as much as possible.
We're going to be a lot of just me and you in this podcast going forward, I think, with...
Could be.
Yeah. Season ticket holders, you know.
Yeah. We and that'll come up in our overtime. It's as if you're already preempting what I'm going to be saying, but yeah, we'll be talking about the season tickets coming into our overtime segment just at the end of our show, because I have a couple of questions and a couple of things that have popped up, and a few things that have obviously reared their head over the last few weeks in relation to the Belfast Giants season tickets, shall we say, anyway. And I'd be interested to get your thoughts on that. So
sure.
Hold that thought and we'll get talking about that later on. But yeah, as you say, and as I've mentioned already, the 2021-2022 Premier Sport Elite Ice Hockey League has come to a final end. Obviously, in our last recording, we discussed the fact that the Belfast Giants clinched the championship, winning the league, but that left us then towards the last part of the week of the season, which was the playoff finals weekend, which we knew going into from after our last episode, we knew where that lineup was going to be and who was going to the playoff final weekend, which seen obviously the Belfast Giants taking on Dundee Stars on the Saturday and Cardiff Devils taking on the Guildford Flames on the Saturday. And the final then coming in the form of the Cardiff Devils versus the Belfast Giants in the playoff final on the Sunday. Unfortunately, but Devils for the Devils fans, happily for the Devils fans, but for the Giants fans, unfortunately, the Devils did defeat the Giants in the playoff final game on that Sunday. Dave, I think I'm right in saying, I mean, the game itself. Let's quickly go across it. You know, obviously the Devils obviously scraping through winning a win this for the playoff final weekend. Obviously, that helps them kind of ease this kind of poor season that they've had to date. I think this takes the pressure off a bit for the Devils in terms of obviously still putting out a bit of a trophy.
Totally. You know yourself, we've been in that situation, going through a season that maybe has been a bit lackluster, and I've been talking to non-hockey fans and hockey fans, and in my work and across my work's global footprint, and saying to people that 4 wins you a major trophy. They're shocked. They're not. They're just like, how is that considered a major trophy?
Yeah.
And it really, and yes, okay, it's our playoffs. It's how it's structured. It's not going to change. The final weekend, such a big event. It's not going to change in that aspect. But the idea of deciding a trophy in 4 games, 4 games is unheard of. Now, okay, yes, you have to qualify, but it's only 2 teams miss out on that qualification. So, but the Devils, to be fair to the Devils, their position in the league doesn't reflect the quality of that team. I think it probably reflects the turbulent year they've had with losing their coach, and they had a rake of injuries at the start of the season, especially with their defenseman. I'm not going to hazard a guess how to pronounce it. The Finnish fella. He was out for a chunk of the season, especially in the Challenge Cup final. So they lost big core players at really critical times for them, and that had a knock on their season. They were, in my opinion, the second best team in the league. The Giants by far was the best. But any given Sunday, we talked about this before, if that had been over a 3-game, 5-game series, I think the Giants would have won that.
Yep.
And the score doesn't really reflect the game. It was really a 1 goal game.
I was just about to ask that question. Obviously, the final score on the day was 6-3 to the Cardiff Devils, but that scoreline is a bit, it's a bit inflated if you think
Yeah,
about, we within the last 2 minutes, so we pulled, they went for the man advantage because obviously we pulled Besco,
yeah,
to try and bring the extra man on the ice to try and score, claim back that goal, but they got two empty net goals at the end, within
yeah.
the
You
final
you
two
have to
minutes.
just. It's not the and to be fair to Adam and the team, that stage in the season, you're better just throwing it at the wall and seeing what happens. It's worked for us in the past, and it could have if it had worked for us again, it would have been a storybook moment, but it just didn't. This just doesn't happen. But you could sit there with Besco in and still not get that goal. You don't was it no nothing ventured, nothing gained. You're better taking that chance, especially when it comes down to a single game. That's that's the way to do it, especially with the likes of Caruth in net. You just have to get as many angles on him as possible and hopefully break him down. So
Yeah. I mean, as Meatloaf sang once, 2 out of 3 ain't bad, and that's exactly what happened with the Giants. They pulled out 2 out of 3 trophies. You can't be bad to that. And I
as much
know,
as I complain about the Challenge Cup, it is arguably more difficult to win than the. Well, it's not arguably. It is more difficult to win than the playoff trophy. And the league is the hardest thing, probably one of the hardest trophies in the hardest trophy in ice hockey to win. And apart from the likes of the President's Trophy in the NHL, you're nobody else really cares about their league. Even nobody in the NHL cares about the league. So this having such a weight, especially getting you the European spot, it's such a big trophy,
yeah.
and that's just the way it is. Like I would rather take the league than the playoffs any day of the week.
Yeah, and you mentioned it there, and that was my next point as well. Was just obviously by the Devils, securing that playoff win. It also secures them a position in the Continental Cup next year. They will be
Yes.
playing in the Continental Cup, and the Belfast Giants will be playing in the Champions Hockey League. So the Giants will be starting their season earlier this next season, probably around about August time compared to the rest of the teams. So we probably will see more action coming up to that, in early August, I suppose, this year. And obviously the Continental Cup then will be later in the year, around about October, November time, for the Cardiff Devils to go off to Europe to play in that competition. Dave, we have a lot of stories in the Elite League, which we have to cover in period one. And when I say a lot of stories, I mean a lot of stories. So what I'll do is we'll switch our attention across to the NHL, across the pond, and get a quick rundown since our last episode, if that's okay with you.
Yep.
Obviously, since our last recording, the general league there, has come to an end, and the playoff spots and playoffs have actually already started. The first playoff games have started in the last 2 days as of recording. Just to give a final rundown of the standings and who ended up where, before we move on to the playoffs themselves. We'll look at the Eastern Conference in the Metropolitan Division. Carolina clinched the first place there with 82 games played and 116 points. New York Rangers came second with 82 games played and 110 points. And the Pittsburgh Penguins, 82 games played and 103 points. All three obviously securing a spot in the playoffs. In the Atlantic Division then, Florida Panthers took top seed in there with 82 games played and 122 points. Toronto came second in 82 games played and 115 points, and Tampa in third with 82 games played, 110 points. The two wild card spots then taken by Boston and Washington. We should just mention, for the sake of posterity, and also because Aaron is a Philly fan. Philadelphia did finish ninth place in the conference. Probably not the best place to be finishing, but good for it. Probably a good draft spot and a good draft pick in the upcoming draft in 2 months' time, I think it is. No, next month. 2 months time, and whatever, in the next month or so. Crossing the other side of the country and over the western side and the Central Division, Colorado took first place with 82 games played, 119 points. Minnesota came second with 82 games played and 113 points, and St. Louis third with 82 games played and 109 points. Pacific Division then, Calgary came top with 82 games played, 111 points. The Edmonton Oilers in second there with 82 games played, 104 points, and Los Angeles in third place place with 82 games played, 99 points to come back to the playoffs for the first time. I think I seen in about 6 years. I think I read somewhere today. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it was something like that statistic today that I read. Wildcard spots then taken there by Dallas and Nashville, just about as well. I should just mention Nashville were just on the cusp of a spot. Just to John, I think John sweated a wee bit there in that last run in for the last few games, but they were able to clinch that spot. As I mentioned, the playoffs, Stanley Cup playoffs, have officially started as of this week. I think all first games have been played as of today. The second games will be played. Some second games are being played tonight. Just to kind of give you a quick run through of the Stanley Cup playoffs and who's facing who, to kind of give you a bit of an idea. So that first spot, we've got the Preds taking on the Avalanche. We have Minnesota Wild taking on the Blues. We have Calgary taking on Dallas. Oilers taking on LA. And across on the other side, we have Florida against the Capitals, Toronto Maple Leafs against the Tampa Bay Lightning, Carolina against Boston, and then we've got New York Rangers versus the Pens. My thing is, my happiness, I suppose the part of me that makes me a bit happy and a bit more like, a bit more sigh of relief is that if Toronto do advance, it would be at least the third round before they could possibly see Boston. So fingers crossed. I'm hoping that Boston get put out before that point, just because they do.
It to the playoffs.
Sorry?
Blackhawks didn't make it to the playoffs.
No.
Usually who put the Wild out.
See, so you haven't got a boogie team. I mean,
well.
Should we talk about the first games so far?
Yeah. So I'll get my misery out of the way quickly. Yeah. So as I know, as I'll let you all know. So the Wild went into this game, the first game of the series, having only beat the Blues once, this season, 1 out of 5. And it didn't seem like that was going to change in this first game with a 4-0 defeat, which was painful. Unfortunately, I've only seen the highlights. Well, or fortunately, I've only seen the highlights. But here's, this is why we do the best of 7. So let's see who can turn it around. You never know. Maybe the Wild will pull it back together. Stranger things have happened.
Stranger things have happened. In terms of Leafs, from a Leafs point of view, the second game is on tonight, which hopefully I will maybe catch. But the first game, which took place on Monday night, Toronto beat. I was surprised. I did not expect to see the scoreline that I seen. Toronto taking that first game 5-0 against the Lightning. It was a. We'll be talking about it later on, because obviously there will be a moment in our penalty box segment which will refer back to this game, which we will talk about. But there was, let's just say, there was a lot of aggression, it was a very aggressive, bloody game, and it was a very dominant performance from Toronto, which was I'm not saying surprised, but it was not expected. I was not expecting that. So we're leading one game in the series, but obviously still another 6 games to play. Let's hope the Leafs can put it to bed before it gets to that point. But we all know the Lightning are a good dominant team and have great performance. So I doubt we'll walk it. I'm sure Lightning will fight back over the next.
Preds didn't have the most interesting first game. They conceded 5 goals in the first period, ending with a 7-2 result. So at least they scored. The Wild couldn't even manage to do that. So.
Well, it's okay. We've got another game. We've got a couple more games to go. Don't you worry. Dave, again, I think that'll take us to the end of our roundup for the Stanley Cup as well. And I think, as I mentioned before, we've got a lot to cover. So if it's okay with you, what we'll do is we'll round off our preamble, our pre-game, and we will get stuck straight into our period 1 of hockey.
Awesome.
Okay, period 1 is a roundup of all of the stories that are coming out of the UK and the UK ice hockey scene. Dave, as I've already alluded to in our pre-season, our preamble, our pre-game, we have a lot to talk about here. Mm-hmm. There's been so much change, so much has happened since the season has came to an end this past Sunday. A lot of changes. Some of those changes were announced. We should say a couple of those. There's one story we are going to talk about here, which happened prior to the final weekend, which we
Yeah.
we haven't had a chance to talk about yet because obviously we haven't recorded since then. But what we should mention as well, I just wanted to start off this period by obviously mention the playoff final weekend was obviously this past weekend, but as well as the Elite Ice Hockey playoff weekend, we also had the NIHL National Playoff Final this past weekend as well, in which the Sheffield Steel Dogs they beat the Milton Keynes Lightning to win the National Playoff Championship. They won that game 4-1 in the final, and that was held in Coventry in the Skydome Arena. We usually do find that I know. Obviously, we're not experts in when it comes to the NIHL. There's other there's other podcasts and people who cover it who do a far more superb job than we do. But we do touch upon it because obviously it is of interest and it always does catch our attention. But I know there was a lot of talk around the fact that, and we'll come back to probably attendance and stuff later in this podcast because this question's been asked of us for our overtime segment, so we will come back to it. But I mean, obviously we've seen that there was a bit of and maybe the people who maybe were in attendance in Coventry can maybe give us a bit of enlighten us about how it was for them. The playoff weekends usually are separate. They usually fall on separate weekends. So usually we have the Elite League playoff final weekend happens 1 week prior to the NIHL playoff weekend, so there's usually is a bit of a separation, which means that if any fans who follow an NIHL team wishes to go to the playoff weekend, who's also maybe a fan of one of their other Elite League teams, so say for example in this case you have the Sheffield Steelers and the Sheffield Steel Dogs, maybe some Steelers fans are Steel Dogs fans and vice versa. It's one of those ones where would it have an impact because obviously the weekend fell on the same weekend. So I mean it's a question we could put out there. Maybe someone could give us a bit of a heads up and let us know how the attendance was for the NIHL playoffs. But
didn't see any details of the attendance. But I would say it was probably better attended than the Elite League one. But
quite possibly, yeah, we will get into that. But massive congratulations to the Steel Dogs who secured the NIHL playoff final weekend and final trophy. So fair play to them, stick tap, and congratulations. So I just wanted to quickly mention that before we moved on. We do have a couple more stories coming out of the NHL later on in this period to talk about, so we will get back to that. Starting off, let's go with the first story that came as a bit of a no surprise because we talked about this in our previous podcast. There was an interview held with the Panthers owner Neil Black, in which he made it very clear. He alluded to it, made it very clear, and there was no hesitation in what he was saying at the time. He alluded to the fact that Doucette, if the things didn't go, better, shall we say, if things didn't improve over the course of the few weeks, the run up to the playoffs obviously didn't work in their favour. They didn't make the playoff final weekend, which was shocking for everyone. Both Sheffield Steelers and also the Nottingham Panthers didn't make it to that weekend. And as a result, Doucette has been released and parted ways with the Nottingham Panthers. This was announced on Monday following the playoff final weekend. I mean, we knew it was coming, but was it a surprise, Dave? I mean,
okay, it's a funny one. Yes, we knew it was coming. I didn't see his signing coming. Whenever it did happen, with the 2019, he seemed like a strange choice to me then. And if I'm not wrong, he came straight off a play-in season.
Yeah.
And it seemed a bit of a big jump to take a jump straight to the back room. Yes, okay, he maybe does have experience in that and all that jazz. Maybe, I don't know. Nobody knows what everybody does in their personal life. Maybe he's a lot more management experience than I ever knew. But it's a very different role, even from a coach, and it's something I think coaches have to grow into, or even people have to grow into that. GM, head of hockey operations, his director of hockey. I know that they've come up with a new title again later on, which we'll chat about. But it's less. Okay, yeah, it's still hockey, but it's less hockey, more business. It's more, long-term planning than short-term. And to me, he's only had one season, really.
Yep.
With COVID and everything. And you wouldn't really call the Elite Series It was a league in a bottle. It wasn't really a proper league. You wouldn't really call it one. So you had one season. Yes, they underperformed. He picked the coach. Yes, but again, how much of it was actually the coach's fault as well? It was just a bit of a mismatch. I think it's unfair, really, to get rid of anybody in that sort of role after one season, especially the season he had. But it's just, we know Nottingham, if they don't succeed or they don't have at least the visibility of succeeding, the competitiveness and challenging, they're not going to hang about with people. They used to have that old revolving door of players whenever they used to have issues. So hopefully the same thing doesn't happen to the next one, because he's a favourite of ours.
Yeah.
Just what it is.
Yeah, let's get into that in terms of what's happened next. At the same time, on Monday, obviously, when the Nottingham Panthers announced the departure of Doucette, we also heard of the departure of I suppose a long-running general manager and head coach of the Dundee Stars, Omar Pasha, had announced that he was stepping down from his role with the organisation. This came out of the weekend. Now, this is probably one of those ones that came out of the weekend that if you were present at the weekend, it's one of those ones.
Oh, yes.
We obviously, it's one of those ones that whenever the playoff final weekend, for anybody who has never attended the playoff final weekend or anybody who's outside of the UK, the playoff final weekend is an opportunity for all of the fans. So all of the fans right across the league are all come together for this one weekend. When it's more affordable, there's more fans. But all the fans come together, and it creates a really good buzz. Like, it creates a really good,
like a melting pot.
Yeah, and it's like there's a bit of humor. There's a lot of humor. There's a lot of rivalry, but it's fun rivalry. There's nothing ever really too serious. It's just, there's something about it. There's a really good atmosphere created. But on top of that, and part of that, you get the rumor mill. The rumor mill starts to flow. You start hearing this player's going there, this player's going there, this person's leaving there and going here. Oh, I've already heard this. So there's loads of rumors you've heard, and there's loads of rumor sites out there who might get it right just because it's 50-50 shot.
Signed,
And this is one of those that I can imagine was probably a rumor that was probably just going around and everybody knew it already.
Say at one point he was probably going to every single team in the league.
Yeah, I would say so.
Remember the year? Was it the Thornton's Chocolates?
Thornton's Chocolates, yeah.
Our head coach.
Yeah. And it was Todd Kelman came around and it was giving out the Thornton's chocolate. Throwing it into the crowd and giving us all chocolate and stuff. It was like, oh, I wonder what this could possibly mean. And then obviously they announced Thornton like a couple of days later. This is quite similar. So Omar Pasha announced that he was leaving the Dundee Stars as general manager and head coach on Sunday into Monday, straight after the playoff finals. Then to be announced today, as of Wednesday, the 4th of May, it was announced by the Nottingham Panthers that Omar Pasha will be taken over in a new role, within a newly created role within the Panthers as a CEO, which would allow Omar to oversee both the off-ice and on-ice activities of the Panthers. His first key task and first key role within the appointment for the Panthers is to assign and to hire the head coach for the 2022-2023 season, and they're expecting that announcement to be made in the coming weeks. Panthers chairman Neil Black did comment to say that he was thrilled that Omar was on board, and obviously seeing the job he had done with Dundee, he can see that drive, passion, enthusiasm will hopefully kickstart the desire to climb back to the top of the elite league for this team as well. So obviously big pressure, a lot of pressure being put on his shoulders straight away to deliver. I mean, Dave, let's get your thoughts. I mean, we both like Pash. He's a great guy.
He's a great coach.
He's a great coach.
He's done wonders with that team.
I mean, with the backing of the Nottingham Panthers, a bit more cash, being injected into it.
Now there is that argument. Now we know this. We've had this happen. So we had Doug Christensen come in after a not so successful year in Edinburgh. Came to the Belfast Giants, and yes, okay, that first year, did we win the league that year?
Not in the first year, I don't think. No,
not in the first year. But because he was used to a lower budget, his style of hockey was not the most exciting to watch. It wasn't bad by any stretch of the imagination. He did bring in a lot of big names. If I'm not wrong, I think he brought in Kiefer and stuff.
Yeah.
And if Garside's still there,
Yep.
Stephen Murphy. No, that was Thor's.
Yep.
But you know what I mean. There was a franchise names that he brought in to our club, and he came from a team that had a low budget. But because he was used to that low budget, the idea of having to risk anything with a bit of flair was alien.
Mm-hmm.
It was such a results based team. It was trap defense, keeping the shots to the outside, and grinding the life out of other teams. It was 1 goal games. It was getting the puck in the zone and poking it through. It was all very dirty and grindy. It's not the worst thing. His results speak for himself. He won an awful lot of games and won an awful lot of trophies. But Pash could fall into the same hurdle. He could, in all essence, bring a team together that's going to get results. But is it going to be exciting? Because he's so much pressure and it's so results based. In the likes of the Belfast Giants and in Nottingham and Sheffield and Cardiff and in Dundee, it was just about winning those games, winning as many games as he possibly could. Where this will now be win every game you go into, which is a different kettle of fish. But personally, I think Pash is up to it. The teams he's put together in Dundee have been phenomenal, and hopefully he can spin some of that magic for. Well, maybe not hopefully, but he can.
Hopefully for the
hopefully
the
he can make
Panthers
the
fans.
second.
Yeah.
He make the second best team in the league.
Yeah, fingers crossed. That's exactly it. I mean, I suppose it's one of those ones where it probably didn't come as a surprise. I think it was probably one of those ones where as soon as it was announced, I think it was kind of maybe a guess that's obviously there was a vacancy that was coming up. I think we kind of guessed there was going to be some kind of movement. I think we even in our group chat, I think we chatted about whenever whenever he mentioned he was parting ways and he was moving on from Dundee, I think we all agreed that, well, we're going to see him, he's going to pop up somewhere within the league. Obviously we weren't sure where that was going to be. We weren't sure. I think there was a
John
talk.
had it fairly early on.
Yeah, I think he did, and he had mentioned it, and I think he had said I wouldn't doubt if it was going to be there over anywhere else, because I think obviously the two options we were looking at was going to be either Nottingham. He's going to either show his head in Nottingham, or he was going to show up in Cardiff as a coach there in Cardiff. But I kind of felt that maybe he's looking more than just a coaching role, obviously, because obviously he was already in such a prem role within the Dundee Stars, so it had to be something big. So I guess Nottingham Panthers was the right choice for him. I suppose that was the right place to go. But yeah, again, it's again more movement. There has been other rumours that have came out of that weekend, which obviously we won't digress on rumours because obviously there's no factual basis for those rumours.
We're a hard news podcast.
But there's been a few interesting ones in relation to like where players particularly are going. There's been certain names and stuff batting around in terms of like moving around the league. And I've also read a couple of rumours around. Obviously the coach who has just left the Nottingham Panthers, shall we say, Wiss, where he might turn up next. I was reading a wee bit of a rumour around that too, so it'll be interesting to see if that pans out. Any of those rumours are actually come out true or not. And if they do, then again it's another playoff final weekend. I suppose. What's rumour mill it actually came to pass, so we'll wait and see. The other news then that's came out, and again it's more changes when it comes to the head coaching and the I suppose general manager roles, and this is the news that Manchester Storm's Ryan Finnerty will step back from his role as head coach and instead become the general manager for the club instead. He has made the decision to step away from the bench and after coaching all these years, and he has decided that it's the right time for him to focus on the dual role he had of head coach and general manager was obviously taking a lot out of him. Obviously there's a lot to it. So his new challenge will be more to do with the background, focusing on the off ice, and bring in a new coach to focus on the on ice, I suppose talent and I suppose performance of the club. So it'll be interesting to see maybe where Ryan goes in relation to that head coaching for.
Yeah. A
The
lot of
Manchester
coaches needed for this league for next year. So that's what Dundee,
Manchester,
Nottingham,
Cardiff.
and Cardiff.
Nottingham, yep, all looking head coaches.
And we all have a gut feeling that maybe Fife as well, but obviously that's not been confirmed yet. But
Nothing's came out of Fife. Although they did announce 2 signings, I think I read,
what?
and I was like, wait, 2 signings already and we're only at the start of the off season. Yeah, I think I read. I think
maybe they're delayed signings for this year.
Just let me double check that, just because I don't want to say, but I'm pretty sure I read something, because I remember reading it and going to myself, wait,
it's 2 people that were signed for this year.
I was like, sorry, what? Yeah, that's what I thought. I was like, did you forget? Are these ones from last year that you forgot to announce? It's okay, just pretend. Yeah. So I think they've just announced that. I think the announcement was from. Let me just double check and see. I think there was an announcement. I think that I'll find it. Come back to me. But I'm pretty sure I think I read those two players announced already for the 2022-2023 season, and I think I was just surprised as that. So maybe I'll have a look for that anyway. But yeah, you're right. I mean, we have a big change afoot, I suppose, in the Elite League, and the 2022-2023 season is going to look pretty different with the I suppose either new or changing of GMs. I suppose in this case it's going to look like it's going to be new GMs to the league, I would say, more than GMs that we already know. Obviously is the GMs that we already know, or sorry, the coaches we already know are moving up to GM roles. So again, it'll be new coaches to the league. So it'll be interesting to see.
We all know that there's definitely an uphill turnover when it comes to new coaches joining this league, because there's such an emphasis on our league play that they have to come in and play, coach well from day one. And that's always a challenge, and it's especially a challenge if you only give them one season. Even like the Giants are guilty of that too, with like Walser. He probably could have done a lot better.
Yeah.
Given a few years, but
I suppose the other question to ask, and I suppose the other question, and I suppose time will tell, will be, a lot of, we've seen it here in Belfast, where a lot of the players who've came in over the last number of years have had the opportunity to develop their play, as well as maybe doing a bench coach role at the same time, maybe as a little bit of a supplement to help get them that experience they need in order to make that mixed move in their careers. Exactly. Do we think that we've heard and we've seen that there's other players within the likes of Nottingham, Dundee and Cardiff? Is there vet players there who maybe are going to get the opportunity to maybe step up into a GM role? Do Panthers take a risk and go to look for a brand new coach that's never coached before as a player coach?
Or even somebody like, was it Matheson? Was their coach this season?
Touted,
because of he done a really good job for what he had. Maybe because he also done interim coach, I think, in Sheffield as well. Is he maybe worth the risk? Could he maybe go up to Dundee maybe? As a head coach, as a proper bench coach. I think this league's past player coaches. I think that's a trick that's been played out and not really as usable as it used to be.
I agree.
But something like that would definitely work. Somebody that has had or is there assistant coaches out there that are maybe been working their way up through the ranks, like of Mace, Jeff Mason, who are definitely talented hockey minds. Could they be taking the next step up? You never know. These things can go anyway. And there is younger guys there that have the hunger to make the change. And if you've taken the step to become a coach, even in the interim, you're unlikely to drop down to a player again, unless it's the absolute, last resort.
Yep. Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. It'll be interesting to see just where those lie, and I'm sure when it comes to our next recording, we will hope maybe have a clearer picture in relation to the coaching setup in those teams who are looking to obviously bring in and recruit new coaches. So, be interesting to see just where those coaches come from. Will it be obviously players that have been players who are stepping up into those roles, or if it's going to be outside coaching coming in? So it'll be interesting to see. Dave, I'm going to move on to the last thing that came out of the playoff final weekend, and that was obviously the 2021-2022 Elite Ice Hockey awards that were awarded, and these are the awards that happen on the award nights. I don't know if they do the award night anymore. It used to be on the Friday night. I think maybe they do it now on the ice instead, on the Sunday as part of the weekend's festivities. But this past weekend, obviously, seeing the season's Elite League winners of those different categories.
Quite nice trophies, I have to say.
There are nice trophies. I want to get your thoughts.
Compared to the league one, all the metal ones that bend.
Well, yeah, I know. Well, the Giants have destroyed the league and they've destroyed the Challenge Cup. They're both kind of like the Leaning Tower Pizza.
Dropped the playoff one like a day during their ice celebration.
I was wondering, was it handed to them like that already, or did it happen on the ice? But yeah, it's destroyed too. It's leaning as well, like the pizza as well. It's crazy. But I suppose obviously looking at these awards that were handed out over the weekend, I want to get your thoughts on it. Obviously let's look at the season MVP went to Belfast Giants JJ Pikanich. Coach of the year went to Belfast Giants Adam Keefe. Goalie of the year went to the Belfast Giants goaltender Tyler Bescaroni. Defenseman of the year went to Belfast Giants as well with Griffin Reinhart. Forward of the year Belfast Giants JJ Pikanich. British player of the year went to Robert Dowd. And young British player of the year went to Josh Waller. Now,
great choice.
My question to you is, and again, this is a question, like obviously the Giants dominated with the awards in terms of season MVP, coach, goalie, defenseman, forward of the year. There's been some conversations around the British player of the year. Now, there's no doubting that Dowdy had a good season. There's no doubt in that.
Dowdy's a good player.
Dowdy's a good player.
He's a Dowdy player.
Yep. He helped us.
Was he the best British player?
This is my exact question to you.
He wasn't even good enough to make the All-Star team.
There's a player in the All-Star team who happens to also be a Belfast Giant, who's a British player, who scored more points and goals this season than Robert Dowd. And they could say,
also made the playoff final and scored a goal in the playoff final,
What's your thoughts on that? I mean, do you think it was more of a case of, we can't give it to all Belfast Giants players, or do you think...
Allegedly, so the coaches and general managers vote on this and make this. And the Elite League was adamant because every time somebody challenged them on the Robert Dowd, they went, oh no, coaches and managers. I wonder how many of them went, right, if you don't give us one, we're not giving you any. If you know what I mean. They've went, we need to have Dowdy has to, or not necessarily Dowdy has to win something, but you can't win all of these. Which one do you want to give up? And you couldn't argue with JJ Pikanich for any of the others for the 2-1. Bescaroni, stat-wise, trophies, best net minor in the league.
Oh, without a doubt. Yep.
Adam Keefe is coach of the year. Like that's, that was given. Like that was walking away with 2 out of 3 trophies.
Yep.
That is a coaching piece. Now you could have made arguments for maybe Pasha for getting the Dundee Stars to the playoff weekend. But
I suppose scraping a really bad situation. I mean, their situation, Dundee's situation at the start of the season was dire. I mean, when you think about them coming in,
their run in, they were like one of the best teams in the league.
Yep.
He was done a really good job. But to me, the pick for Robert Dowd, it just didn't sit with me.
No.
I wrote down my choices of. We had to.
Well, this was my next question to you. Was it said, and the Elite League put out their statement. They put out their piece, and they said coaches and general managers from across the Premier Sports Elite Ice Hockey, the Elite League, voted for the 2021-2022 award winners. Here's the thing: we were also given the opportunity to vote in this as a media outlet, and we were sent the voting forms for these exact prizes, these exact awards. So how is it just coaches and general managers? If we were one of the people who were allowed to vote in this year, obviously any other media outlet who was given the same voting rights, why was that not? Why have they termed it as coaches and general managers and not stated the fact that actually it's not just coaches and general managers, actually the awards? So are they saying that they give us the opportunity to vote in these, but then actually they didn't use the votes, and it was only the coaches and general managers votes that counted and nobody else's votes?
Did he discard the other ones?
That was an interesting one. Yeah, I did find out quite interesting how they worded it.
Because I wrote down mine because we were going to put.
Oh, so did I. Yeah.
So I wrote down mine, and Dowd wasn't on my list for best British player. Not because he's not good. I think he's a phenomenal British player. Probably he will go down as one of the greats. I had Luke Ferrara for the Coventry Blaze. Obviously, I had Scott Conway. It was
Yep.
number one. But I look Ferrara as my second, just because in a subpar Coventry Blaze team, and he played 52 games, 25 goals, 25 assists, just shy of a point a game.
Yep.
That's brilliant, and and you can't argue with it. Like, okay, fair enough. Oh, well, there you go. Actually, there's I was bringing up Robert Dowdy's goals, 29. So it's not far.
Yep.
So if we're not taking that into account and you're taking into consideration, maybe they're considering that Sheffield, because they didn't win the league, weren't the best team, which is a bit of a shame because they were second place, so they're pretty damn good. But I would say it was more of a challenging season for Ferrara to get 25 goals than it was for Robert Dowd to get 29.
Yep.
And that's to me, if they were going to make a statement, as in maybe make it more or less giant centric, why would you go with somebody else at the top of the league?
No.
You would go with somebody that has really made a difference to a team.
Yeah.
And that's
exactly where I was exactly with you. My voting wasn't fully Giants either. I did have Conway as my British Player of the Year because
you would do,
without a doubt he was without doubt the best one. But my Defenseman of the Year was not a Giant. It wasn't Reinhardt. Like I didn't even think of. I had Jamal Watson from the Guildford Flames as mine. He had Matt Register. See, I mean, we had
Cardiff Devils.
Yeah, Jamal Watson was mine for the Cardiff Devils. Guildford
Reinhardt
Flames.
wasn't even my top three.
No,
so I had Matt Register, then Dallas Earhart from the Storm. So, and you're going. Again, Reinhardt wasn't bad. I just don't think it would be. I didn't think I was going to put him top of that pack. In if it's coaches and players, they obviously are coaches and managers. They see different things than we do as fans. So, but to me, the Doughty choice was weird.
It was an interesting one. It was very, very strange.
The only other thing would be, well, he's 33. I was going to say maybe was he planning on having an out or something, like, is he going to retire or something? He wants to have a wee swan song as being best British player.
No, he'd be kicking around. I think he'd be kicking around the Steelers, Sheffield for another few years anyway. I'm sure that's where he's going to
be going to the Zimmer for.
Yeah, I'm sure that's where he's going to end up again next season anyway.
I guess.
I'd say so. I'd say he's definitely up there anyway. It'd be interesting to see over the next few weeks as well. Obviously we'll keep a wee eye on that in terms of players signing the movements. And we will obviously kind of cover that in our off-season episodes when we scale back a wee bit, which we'll talk about a bit more at the end of this episode. Dave, I'm going to move on. We're going to go back to EIHL. Obviously, their playoff final weekend, as we mentioned, finished this past weekend also, which means that their season has come to an official end as well. So they're gearing up towards what's going to be the EIHL for next season. And with that, the first thing that came in was a very big announcement, I suppose, for the EIHL, and a very successful one in terms of strengthening the standing for that league, and that is this announcement that was made up this past couple of days, in which the Planet Ice, so that's anybody who doesn't know, Planet Ice is it's a brand of it's a company, an organization that holds ownership of a number of the ice rinks around the whole of the UK, how many numbers of ice rinks I can't tell you, but all I know is they've loads. I mean, for about 25 years they have been supporting ice hockey across the United Kingdom, and they have focused on developing, I suppose, the game in a few variations of their rinks right across the UK. But they have announced an official partnership with the NIHL moving forward, which means that as of 2022-2023 season, the NIHL will be known as the Planet Ice National Ice Hockey. Planet Ice National Ice Hockey League National Division. So again, this is great strength. This is positive. This is a positive step for them. And with that, obviously, came as well a bit of news as well this week in relation to Basingstoke. Basingstoke Bison put out I suppose a statement this week as well about the future of the Basingstoke rink. And that statement I think is a positive one also. This is a joint statement, I suppose, with the Planet Ice organization, in the fact that they have, I suppose, they've made a commitment to the development and restructuring of the ice rink in Basingstoke. So they're looking at a full renovation work to be completed in Basingstoke as part of that work. When will the refurbishment happen? What will that plan be? I think they're still out there to kind of come to a bit of conclusion around what that's going to look like. But I think it's a positive story from what I can see and from what I've read, in terms of, obviously the local council and everything else, the leaseholders and stuff for that have released it to Planet Ice, in terms of allowing them to kind of maybe move forward with that. So I think that's a good report, and I think that's a really good positive movement for them, and I suppose it's a good future for Basingstoke there, especially with Planet Ice putting in the permission, the development, and putting in the time and the thing to develop ice there in Basingstoke. We know Basingstoke quite well. Obviously Basingstoke Bison were a team within the Elite Ice Hockey League a few years ago, so obviously we're only too happy to see
players to rescue a dying season, so we
did indeed, and so we're only too happy.
Campbell and Big Stevie Lyle.
Yep.
We're all stolen from Basingstoke to keep that season afloat.
So we've obviously got a little soft spot for Basingstoke Bison, and another place we've got a bit of a soft spot for would be Hull. Although Hull, this is more news coming out of the NIHL, and this is a group behind a new ice hockey team within Hull. Obviously Hull Stingrays are what we've known for a number of years. Obviously that is no longer, and obviously they were looking at developing. The city has been without the ice hockey, the professional ice hockey team for a short bit now, but this group, now returning to the National League, have announced that they're going to go back back to the future by calling the team the Hull Seahawks. So it's a moniker that's a nod to the past. So it's using the Humberside, which is the area, with the team that used to be there called the Humberside Seahawks, which was launched in 1988 as part of that Hull Arena. That's where the team played from. It was run by the Humberside County Council, and the team now will be moving from. Obviously, there's been variations of the different names. We've had the Hull Thunder, Hull Stingrays, Hull Pirates, and now the name will be moving back to looking at this new brand and this new phrase of in Hull as part of that. So again, this will be for the, as far as I'm aware, this will be for the 2022-2023 season. It has been greenlit that they will be joining the National League. So that's been 2 years since I think the last have had a professional hockey team within Hull playing in that league. So a great, strength, good strength for that league in terms of bringing back another team, a good team, but also strengths for Hull there as well, bringing back another professional team. And again, for us, we have another soft spot for Hull, seeing as the Hull Stingrays did play.
It's somewhere I always wanted to make the away trip to. Never got round to it, and then obviously everything that happened.
Yeah,
and even I have a Hull Pirates.
I was about to say, yeah,
over there for autism awareness. So and I have to say that my dealings with the team then, even just to get a jersey, was phenomenal. It was top notch. It was a lot easier to get that than it was waiting for my Giants jersey, my fancy. I have to say. So it's good. It's good to see any improvement in hockey, and the team back from somewhere that had a team is great news. For years and years we've heard about teams folded, and then over the last few years we started to see new ones come back and new ones start. So Leeds, and then obviously now go Hull again. So fingers crossed, it's all upwards.
Indeed, it's only, as I said, it's only a positive sign whenever you do get to strengthen your league by bringing in another team, or bringing back a team, I suppose we should say, not bringing in a new team, bringing back, I suppose, a well-known team in terms of there's a good hockey following there, there's a good strong support. So again, it's only a positive step. It can only be a positive thing. Dave, I think that actually takes us to the end of this period. Actually, I think that's covered all of the news to date. It was quite a lot coming out of that weekend, and I'm sure over the course of the coming weeks, over the course of the next week or two, those news stories will start to develop even further.
Love a bit of off-season, a bit of rumour mill, and
nothing like it.
Covering all these wee silly stories that you're trying to dig into, see if it's true, and so we'll see some interesting changes. Hopefully the Giants get back people we want to get back, and maybe new blood that we didn't expect to come, and we'll be watching it all with bated breath.
Indeed. So we will keep up with that, and we will come back to this in future episodes. Dave, with that, I'm going to put a finish to period 1, and we will get stuck into our period 2 of hockey.
Hello and welcome to period 2 of hockey. This is where we'll talk about hockey from everywhere but the UK. We didn't do an Evander Kane watch this week because I just couldn't be bothered with him. So we decided we would look at a few other bits. And Marty's done the research for this period also. I'd like to thank him for that. So I will hand it over and let him have a chat, and then we'll come back and chat with me, obviously through these pieces, but chat to me more when it comes to the penalty box, because I have to hang my head in shame for a certain player. So
we'll talk about that. That's an interesting one. I can't wait to get that because I want to get your thought on that. But we'll start off. We have touched base on it. We have touched upon this already slightly in our pre-game, shall we say? We talked about the elite, the NHL coming to an end and the Stanley Cup playoffs starting as of this week. The Stanley Cups, as we mentioned, has started as of this week, and it's the same as usual for anybody who isn't a massive fan or who has never really listened to or watched the playoffs. If you're only kind of getting into ice hockey, I know there's a few. I got talking to what's been really nice over the last few over the last few games at the Belfast in the SSE Arena, has been that with the bar off ice, the new bar they're reopening, it's given us an opportunity to kind of almost get back to kind of a bit of normality, a bit of reconnect, getting a chance to talk to people and getting a chance to kind of just really getting to meet people we haven't really getting to speak to for a long while, but also getting to speak to some new faces that we haven't spoken to before. And it's given us an opportunity to actually speak to a few people who listen to the podcast, and it's been really nice getting to chat to some people who listen to the podcast that came over and said, I listen to your podcast, just want to come over and say hello. And it's been really nice to kind of get to talk to them and everything else. And one of the things that someone mentioned was that actually they're new to ice hockey as of this year, so they're quite new, and even some of the things that are still new to them that they don't know, and NHL is a new world to them as well. That this is the first time they've watched the NHL as of this season, so I thought it'd be a kind of a good idea to just kind of, for anybody who is listening for the first time, who is only getting into the NHL, who's new to the world of hockey, it's just kind of go through obviously a bit of the NHL playoffs, Stanley Cup playoffs, and kind of see how different it is to obviously our home domestic playoffs, because obviously it's very, very different. As of the way the structure for the playoffs works in the NHL is that the playoff format has the teams with the most points taking the second wildcard teams as well. So once we mentioned at the start, all those teams we mentioned at the start will go into the rounds, and from each conference will go into the rounds, and the division winners then, second most points, will face off the top wildcard teams. So we kind of went through the brackets in terms of who's playing who, and each series, as David mentioned as well, is a best of 7 format. So the teams will play 7 games. If you happen to win 4 out of those 7 games, you win, you go through. If it happens to come down to, if you win majority of those games straight away, if you win 6 games and they only, you get the picture. Best out of 7 games. Home ice advantage does go to the team with the top seed in the opening 2 rounds of the playoffs. So the team with the most regular season points has home ice in the conference finals and the Stanley Cup finals as well. So that just means that if you finish higher in the league over your opponents, you will get preference in terms of the home ice advantage, which we know does have a massive
2 home, 2 away, home way.
Yep. But also then you get, especially when it comes to the final, that becomes a massive thing as well, especially if you get to the conference finals as well as the Stanley Cup finals. Whoever those top seeded teams are gets that advantage as well, which is a massive game changer. So you do want to kind of be that top seed as much as possible. But the format itself will take us across over the next few weeks. It will take us right across, I think, maybe until the end of June, probably, potentially around about then. And it is probably one of the most exciting points of the league for the NHL. As David alluded to, for anybody who's listening for the first time as well, in the UK we put a lot of emphasis on the league, and winning the league here is our big thing. It's kind of a very football orientated or soccer thing that we kind of came into hockey here in the UK. So it's very much that we focus so much on that league. Obviously all those games have to mean something, whereas in the NHL, even though you've bust your ass the whole year, it doesn't really matter because it comes to the Stanley Cup, and that's the trophy that matters.
Yeah,
So
but we'll put it this way: Nashville Preds did not have a great season this year, and they pulled it together and managed to cling on to the last spot with the flipping skin of their teeth. And they have as good a shot as anybody. All it takes is pull your team up by their bootlaces, and suddenly you're having a chance. And that's the even the style. You'll hear it whenever you're watching the local, watching the Giants on Premier Sport about a playoff attitude, or this one's like a real playoff game, and it's because the NHL playoffs, the style of play changes. Everything becomes really serious. Not to say they're not serious when they're playing the league, but you can tell there's so much more riding on every game, and that's the fundamental difference, is that the Giant or the Elite League put that emphasis on game one of the league as well, the whole way through. So it is a slog to win that, but the proof in the pudding in the playoff the NHL playoffs is the actual best of seven. So
yeah, and that's it. And I suppose the other thing then to mention is, on top of the playoffs, the other thing as well would be the teams that don't make the playoffs. Obviously, then their season is completely finished, but they have a slight advantage, shall we say, in some ways. Some people will say it's a bit of advantage. Some people will say it doesn't really make much difference. But when it comes to we mentioned already, the playoffs will finish at the end of June, just in time for the the NHL draft, which we'll kind of maybe talk about closer to the draft time to kind of explain that for people who don't know what the draft is. But the NHL draft is a key part of the season, a key part of the off season, and that will take place on the 7th and 8th of July this year. So the playoffs will finish before the NHL draft, and the teams who have not made it to the playoffs will, in theory, be the first picks when it comes to the playoff spots in terms of, the draft spots. I know the Canadiens are the first pick this year for the 2022 pick, but again, that will depend on who had the pick, if it was swapped around and all these sorts of things when it comes to, like, we had the draft and we swapped our round pick for. Let's not confuse things too much, but let's just say that's how it's supposed to work. Doesn't always work that way because people trade them off.
Equalizer. It's
Yeah,
meant to be the great equalizer, with having the draft pick. And the best way to look at it is if you look at this year's bracket for the NHL playoffs: Edmonton Oilers, Florida Panthers, and the Canes. I'm sure if you look back, they will have been last finishes not too many seasons ago.
Toronto, prime example. Toronto. They were in a dismal season. Austin Matthews was one of their draft picks. Boom! Look at where he is now. You know what I mean?
The Wild have suffered because they are a solid mid-table finisher every season. They always scrape into the playoffs. And it's just this year they've done a lot better, but it means you suffer. You have to rely on trades to pick up your draft picks, and making shrewd pickups for different people that you maybe trade to get other people, and it means you have a bit more finagling to get your picks, but it's just how it rumbles. But yeah, those even the likes of Tampa, they went after they won the Stanley Cup the first time, they did go through a phase where they were skating pretty low, got a couple of good draft picks, and now they're right back up again. So it's meant to be the great equalizer. You see it more in the NFL as the change up, but then again, it just depends on who Tom Brady's playing for, who wins the Super Bowl.
Yep. Exactly. So we will we'll touch upon that. We will continue to kind of focus on our playoff running in our upcoming episodes as we record in the future, because obviously we'll have a lot less to focus on, will be in some periods. So we will come back to the playoffs as they start to kind of get through the stages, and we will come across that. And I say we'll touch upon the draft. For anybody who doesn't know about draft, we will touch upon that before the draft happens in July. Dave, the only other story I have for this period before we move on to our penalty box segment is the story that came out this week as well. It's came out on Monday. I suppose obviously we all know what's going on in the world between Russia and the Ukraine, but surprisingly the KHL, which is the Russian league, continued on and officially finished their over the weekend as well. So they finished as well over this weekend. They finished their last games were played out on Saturday, and the announcement came out from Finland and Sweden on Monday. Both countries together have come out with a statement and said that Finland and Sweden will ban from their national ice hockey teams any players who decide to appear in Russia's Continental Hockey League from next season. The position of the Finnish Hockey Association is that players playing in Russia next season will not be able to play for the national team, the association said. Sweden followed up and have made the same decision, and have basically said that will not. They're also going with the same guidelines, and that players will no longer be able to play for their national team if they decide to go back to the Russia's KHL as of next season. What is an interesting one is that that there was a statement followed. I suppose it was an interesting one because one of the most well known defensemen in Finland is a defenseman. I wish John was here to help me pronounce these names because I'm awful with it. A defenseman called Mikko Lehtinen, who is a Finnish player, plays for the national team, has Olympic and World Championship with Finland, and he was playing with SKA St. Petersburg right up until the end of the season, which became a lot of criticism. There was a lot of criticism around that, in that he was still playing for the team in Russia playing. But what was interesting was that he reportedly was tied into his contract and was told by the team that he would face a multi-million euro fine if he was to walk away from the team during the season. So in the end, he then has made a decision, and he and the team have mutually agreed that he won't be playing. This is his last season playing, and he won't be returning. And they've released him early from a 3-year contract that he had with the team. So it'll be an interesting one. But it's just another instance of again, the world's reaction to what's going on. And this is Finland and Sweden putting their marker down.
Trying to isolate the Russians from the world as at large.
Yep. And again, I think it's just another instance of just kind of maybe making sure that people are aware that there's no support there, and that there is, if anybody does support that's their response is this. So I thought it was worth mentioning because it did pop up, and I thought that was an interesting one. Obviously, given how well Finland have played this, in this previous Olympics and stuff, I thought it was worth just mentioning that too.
Yeah, I think that is definitely something that's we think is sort of felt like it's been coming. And we'll watch it continue. I'm sure something will be, as the NHL rundles on. We still have those questions outstanding as well there, so we'll see what happens at the end of the season. Okay, so we'll move on to the penalty box segment for period 2, and we'll start with Spurgeon and his interesting cross check, which I was 100% okay. I think it was fine, but it was not 100% okay. So I had to dig for this video. It actually wasn't in the highlights whenever I watched it. I only realised about this after it broke in the news after. The cross check to me was just reckless.
Yeah.
So what happens? They get tangled up just in front of the goal. I can't even remember who it was, the other player. And the Pavel
Bushnikovich.
They got tangled up in front of the goal after they got separated, and they were about to step up. George Spurgeon, I don't know, cross checks his ankle.
Yeah,
it's not a cross check. It's
not a cross check.
Sort of attack.
Yeah.
It would maybe make more sense going down as roughing or unsportsmanlike or any of those, rather than a cross check. I am very surprised that he didn't get banned for a game, at least. Mainly just because it was dangerous. I can understand where it came from. You're down 4-0. He's the captain. He's frustrated. And he can't get his team to get up and go. And he made a stupid decision. And I think that's all it comes down to. George Spurgeon has been a bit of a stalwart for the Wild this season. So hopefully it's a lapse in judgment and it's not something we'll see more of. But if we do, I'm sure you'll be penalised for it.
Yeah, I guess I was really surprised. I seen it the next morning. I seen the highlights the next morning. And especially this one. Obviously this was going around in terms of obviously the cross check. But as you say, Dave, I was really confused because I didn't. I seen it and I thought it's a weird decision to rule it as a cross check.
Yeah,
I mean, you're kind of crush a guy's ankle. There's no other way to there's no other way to explain it. There's no other way to describe it. I mean, I'm surprised he avoided a suspension, as you say. It was nasty. And I know Jared Spurgeon, he came out and he said, that's not the player I am. As you mentioned, things got heated in the middle of the game. He kind of got a bit he got a bit aggressive and whatever it was. I am surprised it didn't get more. But it was, I mean, it did. I was very surprised. It looked like it was a blatant attack on the guy's ankle, and he could have done some damage. I mean, to those, even to the muscle, to the the tendons at the back of that foot. I mean,
I'm wondering if it came down to the fact there was no injury on the play.
Yeah.
And they've decided, right, well, okay, we'll fine him. We'll see. We'll monitor him in the next game. If he does anything silly, then we'll slap it on, because he can be then charged as a repeat offender. Because now he has the fine, so and it'll be something to keep an eye on.
yeah, yeah.
Hopefully he doesn't, because he's an integral part of the Wild team, and without him, they get a bit lost. He was out for a few injuries, and in the mid-season and around the time of the All-Star game, and they caused all sorts of havoc on the bench. So
Yeah, indeed.
So, would you like to take your one so I can complain about your players?
As part of it was interesting in that over the course of the first few nights or first opening night of the playoffs, there was 5 players in total received supplementary discipline for incidents that happened on the ice. These are just 2 of the incidents that maybe were followed up with. Obviously, Spurgeon with his fine. The second one, which I think was maybe the one that was maybe the most harsh in terms of, well, maybe not harsh, maybe you've got a different take on it. The second one, which was probably the most stringent penalty that was given out, was towards Clifford, Kyle Clifford from the Toronto Maple Leafs. He received a 1-game suspension for dangerously sending Ross Colton headfirst into the boards from behind. Clifford received a 5-minute major and was ejected from the game. It did turn into a not only did it was that hit, but it also turned into shall we say, a bloody mess. There was busted heads, there was bleeding, there was blood, there was almost a bench clearance. There was, I mean, the lines went at each other. Goaltenders getting involved, everything. I mean, it was an interesting one. Made a poor decision. He did make a poor decision in that instance. He was very physical. It was a boarding call. It was a clear boarding call. No doubt about it. But again, I think the aftermath of what happened, I think was maybe a bit more. I suppose it got heated. Shall we say?
I would say it probably leans on the same as Spurgeon. Stupid decision at the time, and just cause it caused the injury is maybe the reason for the ban. And I know it was just a bit of blood, but I think that's maybe the straw, and then the fact that it got a bit outrageous after is probably the crux of it. I'm just watching it back here. Bad boarding, but not the worst thing I've seen in hockey.
I don't think so.
And I think it's just been, they've went, right, okay, your man's cut, the game got a bit out of control, and they've decided, right, well, 1 game. I personally think that Spurgeon is extremely lucky to not get the similar, just to put a marker down. I think because it went largely unnoticed until the end of properly until the end of the game. I think you only got a 2-minute penalty on the night.
Yep.
Yeah. I think that's what's happened. So
I think it's interesting because I think a lot of people will say that they would call this, obviously you hear phrases like the silly season, and in different sports around the world it means different things. Look, in Formula One, silly season means the time at the end of the season when players are scrambling for contracts for the teams and stuff in Formula One. Same again in things like NFL and in rugby. That's all around like signings and everything else when it comes to like draft day in the NFL. For silly season, in a NHL, I always think silly season is more in relation to the playoffs. People getting, you know, the people's emotions getting running higher because it is the Stanley Cup, but also from a point of view of the refs in terms of a bit of leniency. They become a bit like almost like, and DOPS as well. They become a bit. They don't crack down maybe as much in terms of
They want the
maybe
players to sort it out.
they kind of let the game flow a bit more, to the point where you kind of think, well, they wouldn't get away with that in the regular season. How are they getting away with that now? So it's an interesting one, and I think it was, the fact that there was 5 supplementary disciplines in that first after that first game, that first night. I mean, it says it all. I mean,
The same thing happened as well in our own playoff weekend with the heated finale of the Devils Guildford game, with the post buzzer fisticuffs.
yep, yeah.
With even Carruth getting involved, and again that's the same idea. They've went right, okay, stupid things happen. If that had league play, you were probably looking at a ban in there somewhere. But it's that they like to take a step back. In the thing, there is the risk that it's dangerous, and that's hopefully what they'll be keeping a closer eye on. Hopefully by getting handing out minor, like the one game and the fine. Hopefully that's enough to slap on the wrist. But the because you're playing the same team the next 2 days, those feelings sometimes can boil over. You can end up with a bit of a messy one, but time will tell, as they say.
Time will tell. Time will
I'm
tell.
all my cliches today, pulling you up by the bootstraps and all.
That's it. Yeah.
All right. I don't think there's anything else for period 2.
Nope.
Awesome. We'll move on to period 3.
Okay, period 3 is our general knocky news.
For a second there, I thought we were going to wait around in silence to see if John said anything.
Yeah, I know. He'll probably criticise how we started the period, but we're doing our best. Knocky news is just a roundup then of any other stories that kind of maybe don't fit within the other 2 areas that we talked about in terms of the the NHL, or just general stories, maybe hockey related, that we kind of want to touch upon. This 2 stories in this period that I've came across that I kind of just want to talk about. The first one was actually a story from yesterday, which was the 3rd of May. The IIHF put up an article and released the stats and information in relation to the spectator gates for across Europe from this season that has just passed, post COVID-19 pandemic season, we should mention as well. I think there was a lot of fear going into this season that the numbers would be down quite significantly, obviously after a 1-year break due to COVID-19, and that maybe there'd be a few more issues around, obviously major shifts in people's attitude towards hockey, but also maybe shifts towards people's restrictions, country, regions and everything else, with all their different variations and what was allowed. But also I think it was maybe a bit of worry that people would not be attending just because of sheer worry and panic and just that sort of thing. But this year it seems to, I think the IIHF have announced actually that it's probably one of the significant attendances right across Europe that they've seen in a number of years. But I suppose the reason why we're talking about this is because the attendance figures in Europe, in the European hockey leagues for 2021-2022, includes a number of the elite league teams in the top 100 for the first time in a number of years. The top seeded team, or the top team within the elite league who has the most highest attendance figures this year, was the Sheffield Steelers, who are ranked 6th in all of Europe for attendance, with 6,693 average attendance across the season, which is phenomenal. It's really, really great for them. Obviously, if we can compare that to maybe the top, which is ranked number 1, is SC Bern, who have an average attendance of 13,348, which is again a phenomenal number when you think about the when you think about how many numbers that is for that, and you compare that maybe to say like one of the top teams in the NHL in terms of like what they're bringing in as well each season, that's a massive
Well, it's
step.
going to be more players than Phoenix.
Yeah,
More
well,
fans than Phoenix.
yeah, that is very true. That's very true. One of the things I suppose to note is that obviously the with Sheffield Steelers, obviously we've mentioned they're sixth place sitting in the chart, but they have moved from, well, I suppose are these average attendances from last year compared to
They would have been
I think the last
COVID year.
The last COVID year, so
they weren't that stupid fake league.
No, they weren't. But they have moved from the Sheffield Steelers. We should mention have moved from 28th place up to 6th place. So that is a significant jump for the Sheffield Steelers. Obviously, moving the spaces within those rankings. We should also mention as well, give a shout out to the Nottingham Panthers, who are in 27th position with 4,740 is their average attendance. The Belfast Giants are sitting in 37th place on this chart with 4,155 as their average attendance.
Did you see who they're just 2 spaces off? SKA St. Petersburg.
Yeah.
What?
I know. Yeah.
They were second before in this. They were the second ranked team, and they've dropped to 35. Does that mean the Giants are flying up through these rankings? We're going to be.
Well, we also maybe have to think about. We might have to think about there's currently a war going on, so maybe it might have impacted the attendance in the last 2 or 3 months, which obviously will be taken into consideration possibly too, but that might have something to do with it. We don't know. We should also mention the Glasgow Clan are also in this chart as well. They're sitting in 62nd position with 2,772. That's really great for them in terms of and if you think about at the start of the season, we weren't even sure if they were going to be anywhere within they're gonna obviously there was big doubts with where they were going to be and where they were going to be playing,
and then even the Cardiff Devils there, I didn't even think about checking for them. 55.
Yeah,
and that is their max 33,000 something tickets. That's all they can fit in there. Really, you're maybe talking an extra couple of hundred, but their average will never be much bigger than that. They just don't have the scope for much more growth. But
no,
that just shows you how close they are to sell out in every game.
Yeah, so 5 teams. This is just worth mentioning. That's 5 teams from the Elite League sitting in the top 100 of average attendances in Europe. Dave, did you see? Just the only there was one team sitting just at the bottom, just snuck in at number 99 there. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a favorite of
the Bremerhaven.
Bremerhaven. Favorite of ours. Yeah, Fish Time Penguins. I
didn't scroll that far down before, and I've literally scrolled to the bottom and I've seen the last wee bit, and I was like, that's pretty good.
So there we go. I just wanted to mention that. That's one story.
The thing I seen at the end, so I scrolled down to the very bottom, and it has it broken down by average by league.
Oh.
And the Elite League is the 4th highest attended league in Europe.
Oh.
It's above the Finnish La Liga and the Czech Extraliga. With average attendance for the Elite League being 2,885, and then the Finnish League being 2,870. So when the push comes to the shove, we're definitely moving up through those ranks. We're not shy off the
3rd spot, German leagues,
the Germany
DL.
spot. So
yep.
You never know, could all change.
That's very close. That Dell. That's very close.
Considering when we compare in quality,
yep.
In essence, to around a Dell 2, and the Dell 2 are sitting down with 1,000 as their average attendance in the 2nd tier for the European leagues. So it is going to be, hopefully, it's a trend we're going to see improve. I know for sure, obviously we're back at season tickets. We're going to be at every game next season, which we didn't do this year. So that's a couple more people that weren't there. So maybe there'll be more.
And hopefully maybe Fife will fix things and get more more people.
10 people in for a game.
Maybe I'll have 10 instead of just 5. That'll help with those numbers.
Well, there'll definitely be one more.
They're bringing our average down. 5 for bringing our average down. Yeah, there'll be one more. You're right. That's true. That is true. Yeah.
I
that
feel
is
like
true.
buying him a season ticket as a gag gift for him.
Yeah.
Make him go to all the 5 games.
I think John. I think it is. I think John has mentioned it previously on the podcast. I think he has that he is leaving us. He's going to be leaving Belfast. In the coming weeks. He's moving back to Fife. He's got a job and stuff in Fife now, and he's moving back. Him and his wife. His wife got a job as well. I think in Dundee. So they're moving back to Scotland. Which we're gonna be sad to see him go, but he will be a regular probably within Fife Ice Arena moving forward. So yeah, he might revert back to a Fife fan. So you never know.
You're seeing if he gets his accent back or not.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, or will he just become more Ballymena? Good question. Okay. Dave, my other story for this period is the this is a new in the off season, shall we say? In the off season starting in June, there'll be a new 3-ice hockey league, which will be starting its inaugural season come this summer. 3-ice is going to hold tournaments in 9 North American cities this coming summer, and it will feature teams coached by NHL legends, and each game will consist of 2 8-minute periods using the running clock, full-sized rink, and each team will have 7 players, including 1 goalie, and competes in a 9-week season that will feature 6 games each night. The idea it'll be a 3-on-3 hockey tournament. Have we seen this before? I think we have. The coaches for the inaugural season are names right across. The NHL are well known, and the players as well are players from various different teams as well. One of the reasons why I brought this up was obviously there is one name, obviously Dave, for you that's pretty well known, and that is Mike London, defenseman who played 252 games with the Lightning, Minnesota Wild, and Ottawa Senators. He is going to be one of the team coaches for this inaugural season. And also then we also have another name. Now, I don't know if this name is the same name that we know. I'm going to guess it is Bobby Farnham.
Oh, Jesus, I didn't even clicked on his name. Let's see what loads.
I am pretty sure it is the Bobby Farnham of Belfast Giants
It looks
fame.
like the Bobby Farnham. Oh, I need to get his jersey. Wonder what the jersey's going to be.
But Bobby Farnham will be one of the other
That's
coaches
class.
in this 3-ice hockey
I
league.
thought you were going to say Jeff Taft, because I said no. That's that's not what Taft's first name is.
But we also then have a couple of players as well coming in as well. So we've got Jeremy Brodair, who's playing for Team Carbonneau. Who's also well known obviously for a very famous dad. So Jeremy Brodair will be playing as goalie for that team. But it was interesting. I seen this, and obviously the name jumped out at me straight away, and I was like, "Oh, is it?" But it is. It's Bobby Farnham, who is a very well known name here in Northern Ireland. But it's an interesting concept. Obviously, keeping, I suppose, the interest in hockey going during the off season is always something maybe that there people have always said that maybe is lacking, or maybe has always been maybe something that'd be quite interesting to see what happens. So here we go, 3-ice hockey league. What do you think? Do you think it's going to be something that will take off? Do you think it's something that's worth
I think
trying?
if they do it, if they give it a bit of how to put it, like sort of fanfare, I think it would be definitely be something worth a watch. I definitely would give it a watch, not just because of Bobby, but the fact that I love the 3-on-3 style of hockey. Whenever you see it you get it at a lot of those mini tournaments and non-hockey related. It's 3-on-3 for the likes of Kevin Smith's tournament he goes to and stuff. And there's one that Richard Dean Anderson, the MacGyver, does in Colorado, and it's 3-on-3, and it's used like the arena football. For somebody that's looking for a local analogy, where they play the almost like all-star games in the Odyssey, and they go around the different arenas, and there's a few teams that play out of it. It's got a fancy name. Is it Masters? Football Masters or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's less ice time, smaller pitch, but it's got guys like, I think at one stage Alan Shearer played for one of them, and they do a bit of a and it's played during the summer whenever the football's not on. To keep a bit of bit of interest going during the period of the season break. And I think that if they do it right, I think this could be another cracker.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely looking to keep in touch with it.
Yeah, we'll have a wee look at it and we'll see how it pans out. It's definitely something to keep a wee eye on over the off season. So we will touch upon that again maybe in a future episode. Okay, that is us. That is it for this week's period. So that's period 3 come to an end. I will touch upon. So we do our next segment is our star segment. Normally this is our segment where we put forward names and players who deserve a bit of acknowledgement for players and everything else, but we haven't for this episode. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to just round off our previous star segment and close off our star segment for this season, and maybe bring it back for in our next at the start of next season. But to round off our segment, our stars, our previous poll, which was put up yesterday. Apologies. Obviously a lot of stuff going on personally at the moment, so we haven't had a chance to get it up. So we did put it up. As of our last recording, there was a number of we had 3 nominations for our stars. We had 2 fan nominations, and we also had a nomination from Dave. The first fan nomination came in the form of Scott Conway. That I know that Campbell put his name forward for Scott Conway, and I think I also put forward Scott Conway. We also have Ryan Hartman, who was Dave's selection for last episode, and Tyler Beskorowny was also put forward by 2 or 3 different fans, including I think Joe, Mark, and I think then Dave, or John and Aaron also agreed with Taylor Beskorowny as well for their choice. With 57% of the poll, 57% of the votes, Scott Conway has won this last star segment for this season. For his performances at the end of the league run-in, and I think that Challenge Cup as well. So Tyler just getting beaten just outside of that. Tyler came second with 29% of the vote, and then Ryan Hartman was the third choice with 14% of the vote.
14? I didn't even vote in that myself. I clean forgot.
There you go.
So it wasn't even me. Somebody else agreed with me. That's amazing.
That's where our star segment fell for the last episode. As I mentioned, we will maybe bring back the star segment next season. But we always do, during our off season, we always do meet up to see if there's anything we want to change and freshen up. So star segment may change or may not come back, but we'll see. We will see. We'll put it to a vote within the board during the off season.
And our AGM.
Our AGM.
That doesn't happen in a pub.
It doesn't, and it probably won't this year either. But there we go. Okay, with that, what we'll do then is we will move on to our last segment for this episode, which is our overtime segment. Our overtime segment is just to cover off any questions maybe that have come in from yourselves, from any of the fans, just to kind of have a bit of a brief conversation about. The first question I wanted to bring up, Dave, maybe we can have a bit of a chat about this, and I apologise for whoever it was that put this question through. I went back through our account and I can't find who put the question in, so I apologize if this was you. Really do apologize, can't find it. The question came in was, guys, now that dust has settled after the playoff final weekend, do you feel that there's any lessons that the league will take from the attendance numbers, etc., following what can only be described as poor attendance? And it did say in brackets, no factual numbers can actually be found. I guess I'm going to agree with this person. I look to see, and I doubt the Elite League will put out an official thing to say this. If it was sellout, they would have said, in attendance tonight was 5,600. They would do it, but obviously this weekend they obviously didn't for a number of different reasons. Now I don't know if there's any truth to the rumors. Again, we weren't there, so we don't know. I don't know if there's any truth to the rumors that people were asked to move seats lower down. Especially into areas that were covered by the cameras, the Premier Sports cameras. I don't know if that was
the cameras were pointing. I noticed during the Dundee game, it started pointing one direction, and as the game went on, it suddenly ended up pointing at the Dundee fans because there was an awful lot of them. So.
I mean, Dave, I just want to get your thoughts. I mean, we talked about it. John, put out became slightly obsessed with the seating chart and the seating. So there's there's a number of those put out, but it was. I mean, we say he got obsessed. We jokingly said he got obsessed with it, but fair play to him. He did a bit of research. He put together those seating charts and he put them out, and people, got,
ramble.
you know, people interacted with them. You know, people interacted with that, with the you know, the posts and stuff, and people shared them and give their own thoughts on it. I mean, what's your thoughts? Do you think? I mean, in terms of, you know, we do see that it's clearly, no matter what, there's no argument. You cannot argue the fact that attendance was down. It was not a sellout. Attendance was poor. You could see it in the photographs that were coming out from the weekend. In terms of, you could see the big empty seats. You could see the seat areas that were covered off in black because this areas didn't sell. I mean, what's your take? Do you think? I mean, the Elite League really will the Elite League learn?
There's a lot of stuff that was done wrong, and we know that. We talked about it. Pricing, no concession tickets, not selling, only selling weekend tickets from the start, and not selling and leaving the single days to the end, not offering single game tickets. So there was a lot of missed opportunities and mistakes. So I'll tell you a story. So a friend who I work with, he is new to hockey. He went to the Giants early on when they were brand new. He's now got two twin girls and took them to their first proper games. The playoff game against the last non-competitive game, you know, the last league game.
Yep.
He took them to, and they had a ball. They had a great time. They loved it, and they took a friend and all this, and he was hooked, and he was like, right, what's the next one? And I went to him, like, look, it's the playoffs, but you missed it. You know, you just missed it. So the only option is away in Nottingham. And he literally turned around and says, oh, well, how much would the ticket be? And I had to go to him, like, if you were taking your kids, it just wouldn't be affordable. What was it, 100 and something?
110, 115 pounds.
Yeah,
per ticket.
and he was willing to shell out for the flights. He's willing to shell out for the apartment because at least he could make a weekend of it. But he just was not willing to shell that out for a child's ticket. He could almost have justified it for himself, but not for a child's ticket. And that just soured it for him a bit. You know, he's like, oh no. And the same goes even for ourselves. We were looking at it, and I know we were a bit of tongue in cheek, but I couldn't justify. Right, I really want to see Metallica play in concert. Right, this is just a bit of an off tangent one. But the last time they were in Belfast, it was £100 a ticket, and I refused. I refused point blank. £100 a ticket to stand and listen to. Yes, they're playing live, but listen to a band that I could stick a CD on and put it up really loud and pretend I'm there. I paid $14.99 and watched the game in my living room. You know, I could justify paying 50, 60, 80, 90, but as soon as you break that 100. You're starting to get a bit of, you know, piss take. Like, I paid $10 to go see the Wild play the New York Rangers in Madison Square Garden. $10.
Yep.
You know, that puts it in perspective. You know, yes, okay, it wasn't a final game and all that jazz, but it was a competitive game. It was league play, and it was a great game, to be fair. But it was also a sellout crowd for a non-competitive league game against the Minnesota Wild in a year where Minnesota wasn't very good, and they sold out the Garden. You know, and that's the league have it about face. I think there's the drop another analogy or another saying, you know, build it and they'll come. You know, if you give a quality product at a reasonable price, people go watch it.
Yeah.
We done it with the Continental Cup for years. The Giants did it with the Continental Cup, brought the fans in, sold those games out. We did it with the World Championships. We did it with the Challenge Cup final. You know, it's one of those things. You know, if they had offered 80, 90 quid with a £45 concession, I guarantee they would have had a lot more attendees. Would they have made more money? That's a different story. I would say they probably still made quite a bit of money this year. And that's the truth in it. How much are the Elite League going to change when it's profitable?
Yeah. Yep.
So they had big sponsorship, yeah, from the Premier Sport. This is money injection. And they say they got 50% capacity at double the price. So they still made the money.
It's a good point. It is a good point. I mean,
people will feel like they missed out this year because of the price, and how many of them will pay next year. I think you'll see that increase.
I would agree. In some ways, I think you're right. I think the Elite League won't really. They'll I think my personal take on it is that the Elite League will probably maybe think around like, okay, we have to. We've committed to this price. We've seen that they committed to the price because if they had at the last minute decided like, right, okay, we're really struggling, we really don't want it to look like the way it's going to look, let's quickly discount tickets for the final game. Obviously they couldn't do it because obviously they'd sold the tickets at a full price to so many people, so they couldn't do it. But my take on it is that they're not gonna they're businessmen at the end of the day, and I think what they're going to think of, right, okay, let's take the hit in the first year. Okay, let's put the price up. It's a risk. Let's put the price up. Let's take the hit in the first year. But we know that as you've mentioned there already, Dave, we know that the want and the there's a crowd there who are going to come. And if we weigh up the fact that like if we keep it at the same price in the second year coming, people are going to realize what they've missed and are going to pay that money for the next year around. Now, there's a couple of things. Sorry, Dave, go ahead.
If next year, this is the thing that I think they'll do. Next year, I think what they'll do is they'll keep it the same price. They'll offer a concession for OAPs, children, maybe veterans, because I know Nottingham do a thing on veterans. So they'll do that, but they'll be able to make a fanfare about it. Playoff price frozen, discounted children's entry. They'll be able to make it look like they are out for the wee man. Not
and
just,
they were listening and everything else. Yeah,
and that'll be the big thing, because they'll be able to say, "Oh, with all the prices going up, we have froze the price of the playoff final ticket." People have short memories; they forget they hiked it up the year before, so they're not really freezing it. They're just probably keeping it with inflation after that hike. So I think that's what they'll do. I think they'll have learnt the lesson for the concession. And they'll bring the concession back in, and then they'll just keep the overall price the same.
What was interesting was I've seen a couple of comments coming out again. I don't know if any of it's true. I don't know if it's true. I don't know if this is a true story or not. I don't know, but I read somewhere that obviously they changed the date of they had to change the date of the playoff weekend.
Andre Rieu.
Yeah, there was a gay.
I've seen that too.
Supposedly he had a concert on the Saturday night in the NIC or National Ice Hockey. No, in the arena. What's it called? Metro Point, whatever. Supposedly he had a gig on. He was supposed to have a concert on the Saturday night, and whenever they changed the dates, they had to pay him off in order to. I don't know if there's any truth in that. I love. Do you know what? If they lately came out and said, look, we're going to be honest, COVID hit. Because of COVID, we had to put the date back because obviously, we had to extend it because we couldn't fit in all the dates. Fine, we understand that. We know what the reason why you changed the dates, because obviously we had to fit in because obviously everything else was going on with COVID. I accept that. If they were to turn around and go, look, hands up, we had to up the price because we had to buy off someone else because we had to get rid of Andre Rieu from the arena. We had to say no to him. We had to pay off the gig that he was doing.
Orchestra.
Yeah, we had to get them to go. Like if they had have openly said, yeah, we have to because hockey's taking priority, we're telling someone else to sling their hook and they can't play here.
How many times it happened the other way around?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, okay. Yeah. And if they had have been open and transparent about it, then I think people would have been like, okay, right, I understand why the price is the way it is. But then again, it doesn't excuse why they didn't think about the concession prices and everything else.
Yeah. And then why... because then I suppose we'll find that out at the end of the year or the end of next season. If the prices are still the same, then that's obviously just a way to make money. But we've talked about this before. I think about the fact that the hockey fans are relatively open, and if you tell them something, they'll generally take it on the chin when it comes to stuff like this. I can't remember what. Oh, it was the Giants about the Challenge Cup final. If the sort of change in the wording of the season ticket. If you just tell people, they generally are all right. Yes, they'll complain, but they're going to complain just as well if you don't.
Well, actually, that takes me into that's a good segue, because obviously we're talking about communication. We're talking about the fact that, like, as a fan base, you do prefer communication coming from your team, and I think we can all agree, and I think we're not talking in turn by saying that I think all fans from right across the league, no matter what team you're from, we it's not that we believe we feel that we need a certain level of communication to come out. I don't think we understand that we get communication when it's important, but sometimes we do have an argument where maybe there's not. We feel as fans, and maybe we're not privy to it. Maybe that's just what it is. I think we're maybe some fans like we feel that we're over entitled. I don't know what it is, but I think some fans will argue that sometimes communication isn't strong enough or doesn't come out very well in terms of, whenever it comes to the communication. Like, if you communicate with the fans, as you mentioned, are more than likely going to accept it a bit more, and at least there's a bit of an understanding. But it's whenever the teams don't really communicate it very well or put out part communication is when things maybe kind of go to...
100%. Yeah. So obviously we're going to talk about a piece, but I have a piece because we're not talking about season tickets, but I have a piece actually on season tickets that I would like to talk about.
Yeah.
So I got my season ticket this year. Woohoo! Season ticket holder again.
Yep. Me too.
I had planned to buy mine outright. £400 or whatever it was. I was planning to buy it outright because I had the money for a change. I don't normally have the money, but I had the money there, and I thought, right, I'll get rid of it. Don't have to worry about another payment every month. There was no option.
Which is funny because a lot of people was the opposite way around, where some people ended up paying the full amount by mistake because there was no option for the other way around at one point. There's been a bit of a, as you mentioned, Dave, let's talk about the season tickets. It was another thing that came up in another question that came out in relation to the season tickets in terms of, I understand and I completely fully accept that, season tickets, whenever the season tickets are launched, season tickets are put out there. I'm sure it's a busy time of the year for the teams, finishing off the completing the last season, completing the current, competitive season, looking towards the next season, and you launch your season ticket prior to the season ending to kind of drum a bit of, interest through the end of the season, get people to kind of join into it. So they try to encourage people who are already season ticket holders to renew their season tickets. And then they open up the season tickets then for people to return the season tickets or new season ticket holders, which we're now down as new season ticket holders because we're not back. We're new season ticket holders.
We're just new,
because we took a year out. But this year has been an interesting one, just from a Belfast Giants point of view, and I can only speak from these fans' point of view, and a few things that I've been reading and a few comments that have been put out there. The Giants obviously put out a release, and they've done it in stages. Where the first stage was they put out renewal season tickets, just an easy straight renewal of your season ticket, deadline finishing blah blah blah, second week of April, whatever it might have been. And that was all straightforward enough. Seemed straightforward enough. People were going in, renewing their season tickets. There's a few issues around what you've mentioned there, Dave, in relation to kind of those payment schemes, and a few other bits and pieces were double up of payments and everything else. And there was a bit of difficulty. Some people I've been reading have been having really great difficulty trying to get in touch with the admin teams and stuff to try and get refunds. Now, it's funny because today on Twitter, today on social medias, I've seen people arguing both ways. I've seen some people saying, oh, it was so easy for me. It was so easy. It was done so quickly. And then others people saying, well, that was your experience, but my experience has been I'm waiting 5 days now for a refund on something and I haven't got it. And there's a few issues around that.
I'm waiting. When did we renew?
Monday? No.
So
what day? The first, so Monday, yeah.
4 days. I haven't had a response.
Yeah. So again,
I want to know, can I still pay the lump sum and then get off the plan? Because I still have the money there. But if I was to pay it in full at the minute, I would pay the full payment plan amount, which is only £20 more. Well, only £20, £20.
But it's different.
It's a couple of pints at a game,
Yeah.
And would rather not have it go there if I can save it,
So that was the first thing. So obviously that seemed like it was straightforward enough. The second part then came where it became a bit more difficult, and this is the bit where I was kind of an interested one, and also because it started a question for us as well here as on our group chat and stuff, because the wording that was put out by the Belfast Giants as well in certain parts kind of led us into thinking, what does that mean for the future of fans in the league, in the arena? And what I mean by that is they then put out a statement to say that after the initial renewal of your season ticket, they will open up a period of about 2 weeks or so where you can swap your seat. So you'll renew your seat, you renew your normal seat, but then you can swap it for another seat or another area within the arena. And from what my understanding was, and I'm going to put out here and just clearly state from the start, we are not affiliated with Boomerang Corner. We don't sit in Boomerang Corner. We have no affiliation with Boomerang Corner. we know people in Boomerang Corner. We chat with them at the games. We know a few of the people who are up there, and
we're impartial when it comes to those guys.
Yeah.
They're all great crack, and we all have we'd have a drink with them, but we'd have a drink with anybody in the arena.
Yeah, and so but my thing
Especially if they're willing to pay.
My thing came in the form of BC in terms of that side of the arena, shall we say, and that fan zone area. So whenever they put the season tickets out and they said about moving your seats, they then put out a kind of a vague. The organisation kind of put out this vague statement to basically kind of say that the Boomerang Corner as of next year will be a seated pay like a general release area, i.e. what they're trying to do was they were trying to encourage anybody who regularly sit in Boomerang Corner to move their season tickets from, say, if they sat in North Stand, to move their season ticket from the North Stand over to Boomerang Corner, and therefore would create, so that therefore they could free up those seats in other parts of the arena so that they could sell them during busy games. And that was my understanding of it, and I kind of like, okay, well, I see what they're going with. But there was a whole big thing around, that I think there was an initial thing to say that actually the guys who were sitting up there would actually just be buying a season ticket for a general sale in Boomerang Corner, i.e. they wouldn't be picking a specific seat. So it would just be like you pay for your season ticket and it's just Boomerang Corner and you can just go up there and sit wherever you want. But then I think it turned into you have to choose a specific seat in Boomerang Corner. But then that meant that they were releasing tickets for sale at for the rest of it. So that small section just underneath the screen, down to the disabled seating area, that's what they're classifying as Boomerang Corner in the fan zone area, and that's the seats that you could book in terms of your season ticket. Anything down below that will now go on general sale as of starting from the start of the season. I mean, your take on it. I mean, was that your take on that in terms of what the Giants have put out?
Yeah, and it was all a bit wishy-washy. I can this is just to do devil's advocate. I can 100% just understand why the Giants are doing it, and I've talked about it before. And when the Giants have had to put Boomerang on general sale, and it's so they can better facilitate large groups. And this year wasn't too bad because of COVID. There wasn't as many large groups willing to go to the arena. But because there's these disparate season ticket holders that are dotted all around, and there's empty seats, it means you can't stick a group there.
Yeah.
And I know if the season ticket was sitting there, then that would be blah blah. I can understand the reason. It's not probably enough to lose the atmosphere that Boomerang generates, but that's a different topic than the seats. The having to make them move though to their seats up there, I always was a bit wary, because I think the reason Boomerang works is because it's the same people usually are up there all the time, but you do get people float in, float out. We do it if we couldn't get seats together. Sometimes we would just go up because it's available, and you have a bit of banter, and that means that it keeps that openness, and you don't get a sort of a toxic clique. You don't get this, sort of, we're the real fans because we sit here.
Yeah.
With Boomerang being a free and open area, no one can claim ownership to it.
Yep.
Where now that they're going to be seated and have literally someone could go up and go, that's my seat. Yep. And you're going, oh, what's Boomerang? They go, no, that's my seat. And they could literally say, well, my name's on it, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's a different, could cause animosity. Now, again, this is all hyperbole.
Yeah.
It could turn out to be fine. All the guys, all the core guys in Boomerang could get their seats up there and get them, basically they sell out that area, and they might be willing to welcome other people, because it's over capacity most of the time, to come join them. But that only works if it's that group of people manage to get every single seat. As soon as you get one person that has a seat there and they're like, what the hell's going on here? Or if one seat's empty and one randomer comes up for his first game and gets plonked there and they're going, what the fuck?
That was my take on it. My take was the fact that if they're going to release it for general release, like, let's be honest, like, I suppose let's look at it let's look at it realistically. I mean, there's only maybe 5 or 6 games this season where it was only 5 or 6 games this season where you could say it was maybe like a close to sellout in terms of that those sections were needed and they needed to free up more seats. We look at the Challenge Cup final, we look at the final 2 games of the season, we look at those sorts of ones. Yeah, I was going to say it, but yeah. But you look at that from that point of view. I mean, it's a very relatively small number of games that we're talking about that they're going to need those seats freed up for. So it'll be interesting to see, how that does pan out next season in terms of, in terms of does it have an impact? I suppose my take on it is, are they freeing up that area so that maybe they are going to maybe put more groups over that area, so those school groups, so because we know that the school groups create a lot of noise. Like that's not we do know that that the scout groups, the BB groups, the schools they come along and they make noise and
they make noise throughout the entire.
They
game.
Do, yeah,
even counting silly things like counting down the clock.
Yeah.
It adds a bit, like when people are thinking, "Oh, I'm gonna go run get a pint here," they're still generating, 3, 2, 1, and that's noise that isn't generated any other place in the arena, and I can understand why you might want to put them by Boomerang because you end up with this column of solid noise, because if you spread it out, sometimes you get that echo and that weird thing going on. Remember when we used to have people at the bridge, and then people, was it up at the other side of us, used to have a drum, and you used to end up with this like triple drum beat. It's like where whenever it's all up in Boomerang, it's a bit more controlled. I think it goes back to the thing that we've all been at, well, me and you at least, but I've been asking for, is that if the Giants had a standing section, would solve all this.
Mm-hmm.
You would just have, 40 tickets or I don't know, 100 tickets for standing in that corner, and that'd just get your season ticket as a standing season ticket, and then go stand there.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think didn't Cardiff try that for a short bit within one of their blocks as well. They tried a stand-in section, and I don't think it worked out the way they wanted it to. But
it only works for possible sellout games.
Yeah. There you go. But we'll see. As of now, both me and you will be returning next season.
The new season ticket holders for the first time.
Yeah.
That seems weird. After 14 years, new season ticket holders.
I know. I think this year actually marks our 15th anniversary. I think this year, if I worked out correctly, I think it works out our 15th anniversary. So yay! We'll celebrate that this season. Okay, I think that's it. That takes us to the
Boomerang
end.
will keep us right on how their feelings were about the season tickets, and if we summed it up right or wrong, or if they have different opinions, I'm sure they can keep us up to date. Anyway.
Indeed. That takes us to the end of this week's episode. As I mentioned earlier, our schedule probably will slightly change moving forward. We are at the end of our season here in the UK, so we will probably take a short break.
Yeah,
maybe just
we might have shorter wee ones.
We probably will move back down to maybe like just one episode per month. So we probably won't be back until the end of maybe middle of June, end of June, and then again in July we'll come back for another episode before ramping up again for the start of the CHL running, which will start taking place in August. So we'll probably be back to our full 2 episodes per month, so every 2 weeks, starting in August again. So as of this recording, I think the next time we will be getting together will probably be late or middle to late June. Will be our next episode. But we will keep you informed on our social medias, which you can keep up to date with on all channels: Twitter, Facebook, and on Instagram at Door14Hockey. Check out all of our previous episodes, including this episode, and also the content that we've talked about will include on our website at door14hockey.com. Check out, give us a listen on whatever platform you're listening to us on, so be that on Android, Apple, smart speaker, whatever that might be. Give us a thumbs up or a rating, or give us a bit of a boost. It'd be really gladly accepted and appreciated. And don't forget, you can check out our you can also get our episodes on any of your smart devices as well, as by asking for the latest episode of Door 14 Hockey Podcast. I think that covers everything, Dave. Yeah,
it was a good one.
Good. With that, then, what we will do is we will sign off for this week, and we will touch base again soon. So I'm Marty.
I'm Dave.
Have a great summer.